Penguin Random House Audio presents The Highly Sensitive Child, Helping Our Children Thrive When the World Overwhelms Them, by Elaine Aron, Ph.D. Read for you by Carolyn Hewitt. Note to listeners, this audiobook contains a bonus PDF of questionnaires from the book. To sensitive children everywhere, and to those who gently raise them so that they grow up to be secure in a difficult world. Author's Note, 2015. Welcome. You are coming upon The Highly Sensitive Child at a good time. While I do not find that the book itself requires revising, since it was first published in English, it does need this author's note to inform you about the wealth of scientific research on high sensitivity that has occurred in the intervening years. This information will help you greatly as the parent of a highly sensitive child, HSC. It does not change the advice in this book on how to raise a sensitive child. It does, however, provide even more confidence that the identification of this trait, your child's wonderful way of being different, is based on solid research. Equally important, this note may help you demonstrate the reality of this trait to skeptical or uninformed relatives, fellow parents, child care workers, healthcare providers, teachers, so important, and even maybe your co-parent. Often those who care the most about your child are also the most afraid that you are misinformed or overprotecting when you bring up the idea that your child is highly sensitive and that this is a normal variation that you wish to honor. This note may help you calm their fears. You might even consider giving this to some of them to listen to. Just this note, if not the entire audiobook. I will try to keep this brief. The early research. In Chapter 1, I describe the research up until 2002, how I began studying high sensitivity, the initial interviews with adults, the development of a measure for adults, the testing of that on hundreds of persons, and the distinguishing of it from related traits, such as introversion. We found, in fact, that although 70% of adult highly sensitive persons, HSPs, were introverts, 30% were extroverts, and Chapter 1 explains why this is. I also explain there that I did not discover a new trait, but gave it a more accurate name. Early studies of innate temperament, and especially of this trait, focused on a single observable behavior, often nothing but pausing before entering a new situation, and called it shyness, introversion, inhibitedness, being slow to warm up, or plain fearfulness. Although a sensitive child might become shy, introverted, fearful, and so forth, none of these captures the underlying trait, which usually cannot be seen in just one behavior. A better term for it may come along. The genes for it do not come with labels, but high sensitivity is my attempt to capture it. In the scientific literature, it is termed sensory processing sensitivity, not to be confused with sensory processing disorder or sensory integration disorder, as I explain in Chapter 1. The first chapter also describes how I developed the questionnaire you will hear in this book for parents. Is your child highly sensitive? Using the same methods as for the adult questionnaire, but by interviewing parents, and from that, developing a number of questions that were given to over 100 other parents. These were then honed down to those that hung together as a measure of high sensitivity. That is, if parents found one to be true about their child, they were likely to say yes to the others. As with the questionnaire for adults, the items are surprisingly diverse, ranging from startling easily and disliking scratchy clothing to using big words and noticing the distress of others. This is because the questions have to be about behaviors parents have noticed, but are based on an understanding of this deeper trait that goes beyond a wide range of behaviors to the underlying reason for them all. Does DOES describe your child? These days, I explain the underlying trait as having 4 aspects. That is, all 4 are present in a highly sensitive individual. Without all 4, it probably is not the trait I am talking about. You can remember these as DOES: depth of processing, being easily overstimulated, being both emotionally reactive generally and having high empathy in particular, and being aware of subtle stimuli. I will use these 4 aspects in this author's note to summarize the more recent research that provides evidence for each of them. Depth of processing. While being easily overstimulated and aware of subtle little things may be what most parents notice first about their HSC, depth of processing is really the underlying trait. This thorough processing, or tendency to reflect, can actually also happen unconsciously, but shows up in your child's deep questions, use of big words for his age after he has heard them once or twice, clever sense of humor, difficulty making decisions because he is thinking of so many possibilities, or being slow to warm up to new people and situations because he has to watch and think it over before joining in. As I emphasize in the book, not every HSC will demonstrate all of these, but all will show some sign of this deeper thought about things. True, a sensitive child, or any child, may also be slow to warm up due to real fear, as opposed to reasonable caution, but there must be some cue in the present situation that the child associates with a past negative experience. I seriously doubt that children are born indiscriminately fearful or shy. Such a trait would not survive long in the human gene pool. There is considerable new evidence about the depth of processing feature of high sensitivity. A study by Yaja Jagelowitz and colleagues of the brain activity of adults using functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, has found that when HSPs are trying to see the difference between 2 slightly varied pictures, they show more brain activity than non-HSPs in areas that do just that. Consider the complexities and details in a perception, not simply the superficial aspects. That is, they employ more of those parts of the brain involved in deeper or more elaborate processing. In another study, by ourselves and others, sensitive and non-sensitive persons born and raised in Asia versus in the US were compared on how they handle perceptual tasks that are already known to vary in how difficult they are. That is, how much brain activation or effort is required, depending on whether your culture is more collective, as in Asia, or more individualistic, as in the US. The brains of non-sensitive persons showed the usual extra effort when doing the task that is more difficult for people from their culture. But the brains of HSPs, whether born and raised in Asia or the US, did not show any difference in effort being made. It was as if they were seeing beyond their cultural expectations to a deeper level of how things really are. Research by Bianca Acevedo studied sensitive and non-sensitive people on a task involving viewing photos of strangers and loved ones, and found the same results as Jagelowitz of more elaborate perceptual processing by HSPs, but also more brain activity than others in an area called the insula, sometimes called the seat of consciousness, because it integrates moment-to-moment knowledge of inner states and emotions, bodily position, and outer events to produce what we are presently aware of. If your HSC is more aware of what is going on inside and outside, this would be exactly the area of the brain one would expect to be especially active at those times. Easily overstimulated. A person who is more aware of everything going on outside and inside, and who also processes it more thoroughly, almost has to wear out mentally, and therefore physically, the brain is part of the body, sooner than others. For all children, So much is new in
Sample complete. Ready to continue?